We didn't feel it would be right to lead with anything tonight, but mentioning the sad news of football director of strength and performance, Kurt Hester, passing away on Saturday after a courageous fight against stage 4 melanoma. To flatten Kurt Hester into just his coaching accomplishments would do the man a disservice, in my opinion. As you saw the Saturday night announcement, met by countless former players and colleagues of Hester from U of H and the many other places he has coached at in his career, talk about how much he meant to them beyond just being an athlete or a fellow coach. And it's worth mentioning that his resume was unbelievable. He most
Mhm.
recently, before he was with the Cougars, he joined Tulane in 2021, and shortly after that was part of Willie Fritz's two best seasons in New Orleans, two of the best seasons in Tulane football's modern history. Is the Wave won the 2022 American title and Cotton Bowl and won 23 games in Fritz's final two seasons in Uptown. He was also at Louisiana Tech during their most consistent, successful 21st century run. Worked in strength training for professional college athletes and was the director of training at the prestigious Manning Passing Academy as well. All of this football season, we've seen Kurt Hester's fingerprints all over the Cougs' performances. They've clawed out wins, and we certainly saw that on Saturday night in Tempe, only hours after the team found out that Kurt Hester passed away. The best reflection of a white life well lived is the impact you've had on those around you, and it would be almost understating it to say Kurt Hester had an incalculable impact on every athlete and colleague and person he's seen to come in contact with.
Yeah, man. One, it sucks that we got to do this cold open 2 weeks in a row. Hate that. Tough couple of weeks for Houston Cougar fans and sports. And to the greater point, or to the point of Coach Hester, man, I think the most touching one that I saw, as weird as this is gonna sound, was I want to say like the Tulane baseball coach, another Tulane sport, not football,
I think I
was
know what
like,
you're going to talk about. No, I'm fully with you on what you're about to say.
he was like, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that we are best friends or that I knew the guy really, really well. But all I do know is that everyone who was around him talked about how great he was, and the interactions I had with him were absolutely incredible. And I thought that was a really, I don't know why, but that one really seemed to hit really hard. I kind of hope that's the life I lead. Maybe people who I'm not best friends with, the people that I didn't celebrate this past weekend and celebrate with this past weekend at Dustin's wedding, I know they'll say good things about me. But I hope those people that I touched through my work briefly, even if for a little bit, I hope that they say, look, he wasn't my best friend, but he had an impact on my life, and he did a good job in everything that he did, and I can only say good things about him. That's the kind of life I want to lead, man.
That's the goal, man. We're all getting our number called at some point. That when your number gets called, the people that you had came into contact with in your life talk about the positive things you did for them, and certainly can't say enough about Kurt Hester and his passing. Warren McVay's passing, we mentioned at the top last week, is kind of a reminder of what this all means. You and I love sports. Chances are, if you're listening, you're someone who very much likes sports, but puts it in proper perspective. Like even seasons that don't go 100% according to plan, like there's still something wonderful about following one of your favorite sports teams. And I would say to that end, wonderful to have the ability to talk to you, buddy, week in, week out.
Yeah, man, absolutely.
So we'll get to our first topic, as you'd expect, leading off with a win by your Houston Cougar football team over the number 24 Arizona State Sun Devils, the first such top 25 win by this program since the 2017 season over USF. That one, the fourth and D game, if anyone doesn't remember that one vividly. For most of the proceedings, this game was less close than that 24-16 final would make anyone who didn't watch this one believe. This isn't to say it wasn't a nervy final several minutes of the game, as you and I watched live immediately after the wedding reception ended in our cabin, but the Cougs never trailed in this game and spent the vast majority of it with a multi-score lead of some type. This one, it was in the broadest sense exactly what we were all hoping Willie Fritz football at the University of Houston would eventually look like. This team winning with a good running game mixed with effective downfield passing, fundamentally sound and opportunistic defense, better special teams play than your opponent, and with the Cougar players and coaches just generally looking like the much more composed group, both on and off the sidelines. I won't go overboard with putting our personal stuff into this game recap, but you mentioned it. This game was the perfect accompaniment to one of the better days I've lived as an adult. The two of us got to be a part of a beautiful wedding where our good friend and co-host Emeritus Dustin married a wonderful woman, and then got to have this game as kind of a background as part of the experience of that night. We've both since gotten to rewatch this game in full, but it was really cool to do the wedding reception, drinking and socializing, and then periodically check in and be like, oh, hey, Cougs took the lead. And then later be like, oh, man, the Cougs might be doing the dang thing here, to periodically go over to Dustin and acting like I was doing wedding stuff and whisper to him like the latest score update as the game wore on and the good guys extended the lead. This is going to be one of those U of H games, Bobby, that I'll remember and associate as part of being a fan of this team for the rest of my life. Bobby, what are your big picture thoughts from this one? And whenever you're ready, dive into your overall play of the game.
Yeah, man, I agree. It was really, as weird as it sounds, it was fun to not watch the game, but also watch the game. There's a really funny picture that one of our friends took of the four of us, me, you, Bill, and co-host Emeritus Dustin. Bill, who has done all of our artwork. We've mentioned him a lot of times on the pod.
F1 co-host Bill.
Yes, shout out Bill there. But the four of us kind of gathered around. I think it was Bill's phone, just kind of watching one of the touchdown drives. We kept trying to get it to go in. I think it was one of the touchdown drives where there was a false start and there was just a bunch of stuff. And so, yeah, that picture, I would argue you and I and the four of us have been friends for 18 years now. We kind of did the math, 18 years. And I would argue that is probably one of my favorite pictures of all four of us together. There's also one of me, you, and Dustin at a Rice basketball game one time, or maybe volleyball, 17 years ago that I really love. But that one will really encapsulates our friendship. You know, the four of us, we're going to gather around the Cougars and we're also going to support each other. So really cool moment there. But yeah, I'll definitely remember this game for the upset, for the for where I was, all of that. So yeah, that's kind of the how we watched the game. It felt like, you know, the four of us were kind of talking that we watched enough of the game to be excited, but we didn't watch so much that we weren't on the dance floor and having drinks and talking.
Yeah, we weren't over in a corner on like watching on a phone the whole time. I would say what collectively probably watched like 7 or 8 minutes, not game minutes, like 7 or 8 like human.
Yeah, maybe 10 tops. Yeah. But we had game tracker up, we had the video up, like it was a really good time. So but overall thoughts on the game, the first overwhelming thought, we're 7-1. Like hard not for that to be your number one thought. It's tough not to let yourself start dreaming at some point, right? Like at some point you start, and we had a friend there, Kotler, who we were a couple of weeks ago, he was like, what if we win at Arizona State? And I was like, dude, we're not winning at Arizona State. Like, I will full out admit it. He's like, but what if we
Kotler
do?
1, Bobby 0, just saying.
Yeah, and then he was like, what if we do and then what does it look like in Arlington? And I was like, dude, we're not going to do that. We did it. And it was cool. Kotler was there, so we got to watch it with Kotler. But yeah, it was. It's hard not to start going, maybe we could end up in Arlington. And then in Arlington, anything could happen. Then you're in the playoff. You're probably not right. Like it's hard not to let your mind start to wonder like that. I feel of anybody who gets on this pod, that we talk to, I feel like I was kind of the most pessimistic, and I've been the most like, let's pump our brakes here. I did say like, what if weird things kind of happen at TDECU? Maybe this was preseason. Maybe Tech isn't as good as we think Tech's going to be, and we pull off that upset, and then you win the next game, you beat Arizona, and then you're on the road at Arizona State, and dude, you could be 8-0. You could be 8-0. I wasn't too far off. Like that was like a pipe dream for me, and it turns out I wasn't too far off. But man, you walked into a stadium that no one, and I mean literally no one has won at, not named Arizona State, in 2 years. What is it, like 10 games, 11 game winning streak? Sam Levitt had never lost in that stadium. He lost on Saturday. You won. And I gotta say, the final score doesn't necessarily show how much you seem to dominate this game. Yeah, ended up getting close, but you were up 24-0 late in this game. And yes, Arizona State kind of came out and they kind of uh, brought it back a little bit. That fourth quarter was very Arizona State heavy, but you kind of dominated this team that beat one of the best teams in the country last week. So, um, we had our guest on last week. He pointed out that if you're just kind of patient and willing to just kind of pick up a couple of yards here and there, and be methodical, you can win. And everything he said it takes to get an upset of Arizona State, the Cougs did, man. And the Cougs did well. I've said it the last couple of weeks, you're really seeing this swagger that this team is starting to play with. You're starting to see the swagger that Connor Wigman has, where he thinks he can start making some throws, and his bad throws aren't the worst throws. His good throws are really good throws. You see the line, and I'll get into this later a little bit. The line is stepped up, and I said they need to mesh a little bit more. And I was concerned heading into the season that we were still figuring out who was going to play what line after the couple of injuries you've had. That O-line has started to mesh. The defense is flying around the ball right now. If you see a ball out, there's two or three Cougars nearby making the tackle. It's very rarely one-on-one. The Cougars are flying to the ball. They're playing with a swagger. Man, it's hard not to be excited for what this team looks like right now. And then in terms of my overlooked play, this is one that, obviously I think it fits the bill, but I think this one fits really well. It's actually the opening kickoff of the second half. So Arizona State returns the ball just short of the 30. So yeah, if they call the fair catch or something, they get to the 25. But it felt like there was a little bit of momentum with that return. He got some space just short of the 30. But I think the thing that makes it super important is Arizona State's actually called for a penalty there. And this backs Arizona State up to, I want to say like the 15, like the 12, the 15, something like that. The defense holds and doesn't give up a first down there. That sets the Cougs up with a fairly short field there. The Cougs take advantage of the short field and they go get 7. That makes it a 17-0 game, and you could really feel the caller start to tighten up on Arizona State there. I think if you don't get that call on the kickoff, right, if you don't get that hold or whatever it was, you can make the argument that, yeah, maybe he gets tackled inside the 20 or something like that. But it felt like Arizona State really needed to come out. It was only a 2-score game at that point. It's a 10-point game. Really, at the end of the day, you're kind of like, oh, yeah, this is still a pretty, the big return, the crowd kind of got into a little bit. It felt like there was going to be a lot of momentum. Instead, you back them up to about the 15. You don't give up a first down. I think if they get that kickoff, who knows what could happen. Maybe they get a little bit of momentum off that return. They get excited, and they go down score. If this game's 10-7 or even 10-3, I think it could look a little bit different going forward.
That's a good choice. I thought about my overlooked play for a bit because I had 2 or 3 different ones that I spent a while kind of mentally flipping coins in my head to choose from. I did ultimately go with a play from the third quarter touchdown drive where the Cougs ultimately extended their lead to 24-0. The specific play was when the Cougs had 3rd down and 1 to go. This was just inside of U of H's half on the field, specifically on the Cougs' 46-yard line. Obviously a down distance situation that favored the Cougs and well into a game where this offense had proven itself pretty effective on 3rd down, but also a situation where if U of H didn't pick up any yardage or lost yardage there, I'm confident Willie Fritz would have had to send the punt team on there. That was, one of the last critical plays of the game that I watched live. I believe it was on Bill's phone. An absolutely gorgeous play call. If you don't remember, the Cougs lined up in a classic I formation. They had backup tight end Treville Frederick out there as the fullback with Wigman and Dean Connors. Wigman fakes the handoff to Connors, finds an open Tanner Koziol for a 13-yard gain into ASU territory, and kept what proved to be, I would argue, the dagger touchdown drive in this game going. I think my only reservations about picking this play were that maybe I was stretching the overlooked description in picking this, because this play might be the level of one that would at least make an extended highlights recap of the game. But I picked it because I thought it was an incredible illustration of what the Cougs did so well on offense Saturday night in Tempe. Showing I formation in the pre-snap in a game where you'd run it about 2/3 of the time. You definitely saw the Sun Devil defense thinking run. I mean, they had 9 or 10 guys in the box. Calling play action off that look was brilliant, but if possible, the execution was even better. Both Connors and Treville Frederick did an excellent job in the pass pro. The line gave Wigman just enough time to get the ball to Koziol with lots of space in front of him. The play to me, like I said a moment ago, was a great illustration of both the brilliance of Saturday night's offensive game plan, but even better, the execution of all 11 Cougar players on the field working together to make that plan come to life, and hence why it ended up being my pick for this week's Overlooked play, because going up 24-0 there did ultimately, as we saw, prove to be too much for even a pretty furious Arizona State comeback in the fourth quarter there. So I picked that because they kept that drive go up 24-0 going, hence my pick for this week.
Love it.
Diving more into the game itself, we'll start on the offensive side of the ball, where the 24 points the Cougs scored, I think to anyone who didn't watch this game, who was just box score checking, that point total almost obscures what I think is one of the best performances we've seen from the Cougar offense this season, and part of a larger trend since the Texas Tech game of this unit really coming into their own, and this group of players, most of whom were new to this program prior to this season, starting to gel a bit more now that they've played together for about 2/3 of a season. Last time we were on here recapping the win over Arizona, Bobby, I believe you said something, and I might be paraphrasing a little bit, about that specific game's effort looking like a great illustration of what we had hoped the Slade Nagel offense here would look like. And I would argue the effort against ASU was as strong of a, affirmation of what you want to do offensively, a continuation, if you want to call it that, of what you did against Arizona. This offense was run first, but did a good job picking at spots in the pass game. If you want to pick any stat from this game that illustrates how well the Cougs did offensively, is the fact that the Cougs had possession for just over 37 minutes of the 60 total in this game. Other than maybe wishing you had one more scoring drive in the fourth, this was Houston Cougar football executing a game plan on the road against a top 25 opponent almost perfectly. Bobby, what are your biggest takeaways from last Saturday's offensive performance?
Yeah, man, exactly what you said. My first line in my notes is, once again, you had just an efficient performance. That's all you had, was an efficient performance. I kind of did a little bit of basic math here. I added attempts, passing attempts, and rushing attempts. I added those together. I divided the total number of yards by that to kind of give me a kind of basic average yards per play. Granted, sacks, things like that, penalties, what can kind of skew that a little bit. But Sam, we picked up just short of 6 yards a play, like 5.7. I'm not going to sit here and be the type of guy who's like, well, in terms of efficiency or anything like that. No, like, I don't need SP Plus to tell me 6 yards a play is good. If you can pick up 6 yards a play, you're gonna score a lot. You're gonna play good football. I mean, you get a first down every 2 plays that way, Sam. I don't know if you can do that math, but yeah, that's a pretty efficient way to play football. We thought Wigman, kind of in our breakdown of his tape that we kind of did, is he could get a little happy feet, but if he had a good pocket to stand in, he could throw the ball, and he would throw the ball pretty effectively. And man, the O-line's giving him time against the last 2 pretty solid D lines. I'm not saying that like Arizona has this like killer defensive line, but that's a decent offensive defensive line that Arizona has. Same with Arizona State. So things look really good for the Cougs in the trenches. That was kind of my big takeaway from this game. Is this is probably the most settled I think I've seen our offensive line, and the most excited I've been seeing them as well. Look, this offense isn't sexy, but it's like I said, pretty damn efficient. You're not going to see that big 50-yard play very often from this offense. But what you're going to see is 6 yards of play, right? Both end up with scores. I like both of them. I do want to make one call out here. And this is kind of me talking to myself from earlier in the season. Earlier in the season, I mentioned Koziol wasn't a very good blocker. There were a couple of times where I think I said, like, boy, I'm glad he catches passes as well as he does. Because there were a couple of plays where a counter was being run to his side, or a power was being run to his side, and he just whiffed on the linebacker at the end. Man, on that final touchdown drive, the play before the touchdown that actually got turned reversed by the review. I don't know if you know exactly what play I'm talking about here, but Wigman ran the ball and he kind of kept it on a power run. He doesn't even get close if Koziel doesn't make the block that he did, and it's kind of something I've noticed the last couple of games is Tanner Koziel is really starting to block better. It's almost like an NFL scout got in his ear, was like, dude, you catch the ball, you're 6'7", you're huge. The better you can start blocking, the higher you'll go in the draft. And he's taking it to heart a little bit. So you see some really good blocks from Koziel there. I just feel like if I can call him out for the bad early in the season, I should come back and go, hey, he's looking pretty good there. So that's my call out there.
Yeah, it adds to a guy who has proven himself to be your best tight end in almost 20 years and just an invaluable offensive weapon on the whole. I know the O-line didn't get the Big 12 honors like he did the previous week against Arizona, but I would argue on the road and against a better opponent that the Cougar O-line played another really, really good game. I mean, coming into this one, ASU's defensive front was averaging about 3 sacks per game. And for the entirety of this football game, your O-line did a really good job keeping Connor Wigman clean. Quarterback hurries can be kind of a subjective stat, but the Cougar O-line only allowed 1 quarterback hurry all game to go with 1 sack allowed. And just from the eye test watching this game in full, it was a night and day better effort from that unit than what we saw from the earlier parts of the season. I remember from those earlier parts of the season, it felt like whenever the Cougar offense did something well, it was in spite of the O-line. Connor Wigman did some stuff in the passing game, but did it while having at one point the highest pressure rate allowed. The run game at that point might have been a bit ahead of the passing game, but that also felt like it wasn't being everything it could be with the line troubles in front of it. Even with the modest numbers, like if you look to the box score, the 3.8 yards per carry as a team, in my opinion, this was still a very good rushing performance. Yes, most of it came from Connor Wigman, but there's no way you control this game like the Cougar offense did, the 37 minutes of possession, the getting out to a 24 lead, all of that stuff, without being able to run the ball effectively. And certainly this wasn't Tanner Koziel's first game in a Cougar jersey where he had consistent positive impact for the offense, but both for volume of targets and the impact of the catches he made, don't think you can make an argument that this wasn't his best game to date. You mentioned the work in run blocking and pass protection as well, just all around incredible effort. Because we've seen in a lot of previous games, Koziel fill a really vital role for you as a shorter yardage safety valve kind of guy who can use his skill in 6'7" frame to make some tough catches when Wigman needed to get rid of the ball quickly and other receiving targets maybe were a bit too far downfield that to develop or just hadn't gotten open. And you did see Koziel on Saturday do some of that short, medium yardage safety valve kind of stuff. The third and short overlooked play I just talked about a few moments ago being one of the best examples of this. But he also had the Cougs' longest reception of the game, and he showed that when Connor Wigman's actually getting a clean pocket, actually getting time to throw, that he can contribute even more to this passing offense than what we've seen him largely do in the current season. Almost can't say enough good things about what Connor Wigman did against ASU. His rushing performance will get a lot of the talk from this game, as it should, because he showed what an unbelievably patient and smart runner he can be when you need short yardage or the ability to create something out of nothing when a play breaks down. But also the 50-yard run on third and short on your first possession that I believe was a tone setter for the entire game. I mean, the simplest description of his performance in this game that gives him credit is that he's the human embodiment for this offense of a tone setter. When his teammates see the way he's going to put his body in the line in the run game and also make things happen with his arm, I mean, if you're playing around Connor Wigman, you can't help but get fired up and want to go to war with this guy. And this is
I
also
get fired up as a fan watching him play.
Yeah, I get fired up as a fan. I can't imagine actually like suiting up there. This was also the second game in a row where I don't believe he threw that many, and in this case, if any, dangerous balls. I don't think him having 0 interceptions on Saturday was good fortune. It was the product of both good decision making and, of course, very much tied to this offense mostly doing a phenomenal job staying on schedule, which goes back to what we talked about a bit ago, that the O-line did such a good job giving Wigman time when needed in passing situations and run blocking well enough that more often than not, this offense was remaining on the schedule, that you didn't have a ton of third downs behind the sticks on Saturday night. I actually looked at every third down situation the Cougs faced on Saturday night, and including penalties, negating plays, Cougs converted on about half their third downs on Saturday night. In situations where the Cougs had third down and 5 yards or less to go, this offense got the first down, whether by play or a penalty negating a play, on 6 of those 7 occasions, Bobby. And specifically, the one time where you had a 3rd and 5 or less and didn't pick up the first down, you'll probably remember this, the final third down of the game's last possession, where at that point your offense just clearly had a conservative run to Connors to avoid putting the ball in harm's way in the lead up to what should have been a chip shot field goal attempt. You look at the 5 times that U of H had the ball at 3rd and short, and I define this as 3 yards or less. U of H was a perfect 5 of 5 in those situations, Bobby. And that's just not something this offense really did with any consistency last year or the 5 seasons that Dana Holgorsen was here either. Such as you had offensive success, I mean, you didn't really hardly have it any last year, and such as you had under Dana Holgorsen, it was never accompanied by an efficient run game that you felt confident could get tough yards when you really needed it. It just never fucking happened. And I think we've seen enough this year to say this team can do that. This team can get you the hard yards when you choose. This can be a power running team. It's not always going to be sexy. It's not always going to be super explosive, but can get hard yards when you really need it, whether that's by creatively scheming up a play called third short or Connor Wigman picking up the first down with his feet on a sneak, something like that. Obviously, for the times that ASU got the Cougar offense a bit more behind schedule, it wasn't nearly as easy sledding. But even in those instances, you still had plays like Koziel's big 3rd and long reception on the first drive to get you to 1st and goal. Kobe Young, I think, had one on like 3rd and long, medium-ish reception for first down as well. That right now is probably separating this offense from being a good, solid unit that is trending upward from the best of the best, the very good offenses. But that's fine, because if you had realistic expectations this season and we're hoping that this unit would be better in late October, November than it was at the start of the season, then big check mark there. You have to be very pleased with what you're seeing both in this game and I think in recent trends.
Yeah, the offensive performance was, I don't know if I would say it's the best one of the year, but it's hard to find one that's been better.
It's up there. If you want to talk about things that can improve, and I would say that's something that's gone week to week, including this game, even with all the areas where this O-line is drastically improved and looking like they're getting better week on week, penalties are still an issue. And not all the 7 penalties the Cougars got in Tempe were from the O-line, but I mean, just use a couple examples in critical situations. You had a false start on your left tackle, Alvin Ebasele. Immediately after that, big Tanner Koziol 3rd down reception in the first drive, which ultimately I think was the biggest cause for you having to settle for 3 there inside of ASU's 10. And it ended up being your last touchdown drive. Jason Brooks false started on 1st and goal once again, but then ended up being a non-issue as Wigman ran it in for the touchdown 2 plays later. I mean, nothing catastrophic, but just additional stuff to clean up from an offense that's unmistakably trending up and playing better week on week. Can I give you a hot take for my final offensive thought?
All right, let's go.
You might remember during our season opener, our bold predictions episode, where you, me, and Dustin gave our spiciest, maybe most unrealistic prediction for the U of H athletics year at the end. And mine was Connor Wigman would be an all Big 12 quarterback. I'm going to say it. I think if the regular season ended today, which granted, it doesn't, we still have 4 important games left to play, then a Connor Wigman, in my opinion, 100% should be on a Big 12 postseason all-conference team. And this just isn't for the past few weeks' performances, but early on in the season, it's pretty clear now that Wigman was still doing yeoman's work behind a badly functioning O-line to drag this offense to some respectable performances. And now that the things that were really holding this offense back have improved, you're actually seeing how effective this Cougar offense can be. I do realize that Brendan Sorsby from Cincy and Josh Hoover from TCU have sexier numbers. You also have Sam Levitt's reputation probably bolstering his all-conference case. But for my money, there's not a quarterback in the Big 12 who's been more valuable to their team's offense than Connor Wigman has been for the Cougs. This isn't me saying to write this guy's name in Sharpie for all-conference team in early December, but Connor Wigman deserves to be there. Barring a catastrophic drop in play, the guy's been absolutely vital to this team being 7-1 in the top 25 and winning football games. And I hope the people who vote for these postseason honors are seeing that now and not just zeroing in on his completion percentage, which it's not bad. Like if you look at Connor Wigman's numbers, like his standard numbers are good too. It's not like I'm trying to put lipstick on a pig for a guy who has as many touchdowns as interceptions or what have you, but not just zero in on the passing yards there to look at a guy who actually has willed his team to winning football games. And that's my spicy take. I think Connor Wigman has proven himself, granted in a partial season, still worthy of being on the all conference team.
Yeah, man. Hard to disagree with you there, bud.
Do we have any other offensive thoughts from the Arizona State game, Bobby, that you'd like to talk about here?
No, man, I'm good.
And of course, we can't overlook the performance of the Cougar defense as well. Worth remembering, the Cougar defense was coming off, I would argue, its worst performance of the season last time out against Arizona. One of the analytics-focused outfits who graded D-line performances in the Big 12 gave the Cougs a dead last for that game. And fast forward to this week, your defensive line is absolutely vital to the Cougs shutting out the ASU offense for 3 quarters, allowing your offense to get out to a lead, and your D-line ultimately earns the conference D-line of the week honors when it's all said and done. Wasn't an absolute perfect performance, but an incredible response after a substandard after the previous week. And like the offense, most of what you saw on Saturday night as a Cougar fan, you should have liked, even acknowledging that there are areas for improvement. So, Bobby, what are your biggest takeaways from the defensive performance?
Yeah, to be honest, I didn't have many notes on the defensive performance. I thought what it kind of boiled down to for me was that they were able to make a couple of stops early, really keep Arizona State from scoring. Not gonna, I can't say why or something like that, but I think that played a larger role, the offense scoring fairly early, because what it seemed ended up happening is you got Arizona State out of their offense. Like with Tyson being out, I really bet that the Sun Devils didn't want to throw the ball 46 times. But when they're down the entire game, when they're down 17 early in the third, I don't think they had much of a choice but to throw the ball. I think when they did throw the ball, you did a really good job of getting to Levitt. Maybe you weren't tackling him. In fact, first drive of the game, you actually kind of take him out. You hit him pretty hard. Yeah, I don't think that that they really wanted to throw the ball that many times, and you got them out of their rhythm. They weren't going to run the ball like they wanted to. Even when they did run the ball, they weren't picking up a ton of yardage. I think that that's kind of what it boiled down to for me rewatching this game, is that it just didn't seem like Arizona was playing the game Arizona. It just didn't seem like Arizona State was playing the game that Arizona State wanted to play. And like I said, I would imagine that if they were really coming up with their game plan, with their top receiver being out, the guy who's got 90% of their targets. I know it's not actually 90%, but it seems like he's got 90%.
Actually, I was so ready, Bobby.
And so with that, you just saw them not playing the game they wanted to play, and I think that was more what the defense did, was getting the early stops, letting the offense cook, than it was anything in particular that they did. I don't think Arizona State wanted to play this type of game.
I'm glad you said that, because I actually believe the fact that ASU threw for over 300 yards still speaks well to the overall performance, because that number reflects how your offense got out to a fairly early multi-score lead and forced this opponent, already down their top receiver, one of the best in the college game, Jordan Tyson, to do something they wouldn't have wanted to do in the pregame and ultimately have to go pass first because they're trying to chase a multi-score lead. You also dig into that number a bit. This isn't to say that the Sun Devils didn't have their moments in the pass game, especially as they tried to mount that comeback in the fourth quarter, but they didn't get those 328 passing yards in a super efficient way. Both the quarterbacks who saw action, Sam Levitt and his backup Jeff Sims, completed barely over half their passes. Like you said, they needed 46 attempts to get to that number. It's one thing when your opponent had a big passing yards number and didn't need that many attempts to get there. They're getting big chunk plays. The yards per attempt, which I believe is a really important number, looks pretty healthy. But when you're forced them to go one-dimensional like the Cougars did on Saturday, it really helps. Like it really shows that you got them out of their game plan fairly early. And yes, they were eventually able to figure some stuff out, but the fact that they had 3 quarters of doing zilch, I think really speaks positively to what you were able to do. And ASU fans can point to at least one questionable refereeing decision on the play that was called a fumble by Sam Levitt. But I would say on the flip side, that Levitt was very fortunate that defenders dropped multiple potential INTs. Just I hadn't caught that watching live, just because I guess I didn't have my eyes on any of my friends' phones when that one was happening. But a couple different times when I was rewatching the game in full, so you'd be prepped for the show, I was just like, ooh, I know Zelmar Vetter had one, and I want to say Mark Stampley almost had one later in the game, but I'm less sure I have the right player on that one. One of the performances of the season from Eddie Walls in this one as well. He's been a bright spot for this defense, one of several first-year Cougars on that side of the ball that the staff clearly evaluated well. Carlos Allen has certainly been the star of the defensive line this season, but Walls' performance on Saturday was a reminder of how good this D-line, and I guess defense in general, can be when the other guys immediately around Allen are making plays and generally making life difficult for that opposing offense. I mean, the 4 sacks tell a story by the Cougar defense, but so do the 4 quarterback hurries as to why this Arizona State offense really was only able to get going late when the game was functionally, as we found out, ultimately out of reach for them to make a comeback on. And yes, some of their struggles running the ball were a result of U of H going up by multiple scores and by necessity having to be a bit more pass first than their ideal game plan would called for. But U of H didn't go up 3 scores until the third quarter. So to me, that doesn't entirely explain it, because a lot of ASU's struggles running the ball, to me, that was just simply U of H doing a good job whenever Arizona State tried it. I mean, Raleek Brown and Sam Levitt both each had one decently long run, but outside of those runs, you never really saw them change the game in a positive way running the ball, which I would say is a testament to the Houston Cougar defense, and also to what you said, like the Houston Cougar offense playing complementary football as well, them cooking and getting a multi-score lead pretty early. So do we have any other defensive thoughts from this one?
No, man, I'm pretty good there.
I have 2 more thoughts, both more of the big picture variety, if you allow me, before we put this game into wraps.
Sure, let's go.
One of the biggest things I really think gave the Cougs an edge in this game was composure. And you know where I'm going with this. What I mean by the listener is that you saw ASU's team, you saw ASU's head coach, you saw the ASU crowd respond to some of the penalties called on them Saturday night in a way that I don't think reflected composure. And yes, it is every home fan's prerogative to boo the game officials for a call that goes against their team. But from watching this, you could see how the constant booing fed into the way Dillingham and the ASU players, they kind of progressively lose their cool and see red when calls didn't go their way, when the game at that point for most of the first 3 quarters really wasn't going their way. Not saying that you can make a lot of other comparisons here, but the way Dillingham and the team kind of responded to these calls kind of reminded me of the way Daniel Holgerson would blow a gasket in the sidelines for us. And at that time, to me, that seemed to feed into U of H being a fairly undisciplined, penalty-happy team, at least certainly in his last couple seasons here. Regardless of how the refs are calling it, you have to have composure. Certainly if you're a head coach, you have to have composure. Not that Willie Fritz will never argue calls on the sideline, but you don't ever really see him blow up the way you were kind of seeing Kenny Dillingham do. And I'm sorry, it's just unacceptable fan behavior to throw trash in the field, as Arizona State fans did in the second half of Saturday's game. I mean, not saying I've never been super angry about a refereeing decision in my life. Not saying I haven't done things as a sporting fan I'm not proud of. I have never fucking thrown trash on the field, and Arizona State should feel fortunate that they didn't get a penalty as a result of it. And before I was able to watch this game in full, because like you said, we just watched here and there on phones and the very end of it on our cabin TV. But I'd seen ASU people whining online about the officiating, and then I got done with watching this game in full, and I said to myself, that was it? I mean, most of the calls their fans were screaming and booing about were totally correct. I mean, I said it last week after the Arizona game that I wouldn't have been surprised if the Big 12 disciplined that game's crew. Not the case at all here. This was ASU fans and at times their coach acting like children that their team, which is one of the more penalized teams in the country, shocker, Bobby, got lots of penalties called on them. Can you believe it?
Yeah, man. I kind of went back through just my thought, taking the crowd out of it. The commentators fed into it too. It's like there was the touchdown catch that was called back due to illegal motion or whatever they called there.
Yeah, it was
And the
the two
commentators,
receivers at the top of the motion. Yeah.
and you know me, I am not one to complain about commentators or referees more than anything. And that call went our way. But you have the commentators just absolutely saying how great of a catch and what a great play it was. And then the referee comes over and he's like, illegal procedure, illegal motion, 5-yard penalty. And then all of a sudden the commentators are like, oh man, I can't believe they're calling it back. I didn't see a flag. I didn't hear an announcement. And I'm like, listen to your own broadcast, bro. Listen to your own broadcast. Like, no matter what you think about it. Now, to the broadcasters' credit, about 3-4 minutes later, they were going, look, here's where the illegal motion was. But like, at the same time, just listen. The referee will tell you what's going on. And that was just kind of like mind-blowing to me that they did not, how shocked they were that there was a penalty there.
They were throwing trash on the field after one of the most clear as day targeting on Connor Wigman. Could not have been, I would say, almost more textbook targeting.
Yeah.
And that's just bad composure.
Yep.
Bad composure, the guy doing the targeting, bad composure by the crowd. My last thought is that none of us, including the two of us sitting here recording this podcast, all Cougar fans tuning in, none of us should take for granted how insanely ahead of schedule Willie Fritz has his team in year 2. Any Cougar fan who had realistic expectations for this season was probably just looking for some kind of multi-game improvement in the win column. I know I was after going 4-8 in his first season here, and we've blown past that. It's not even November yet, and this team has already hit the 7-win mark, the 7-win preseason mark that I expected. And while I will believe this team truly contends for the Big 12 title in a few weeks, Bobby, at the moment I see it, I'm not there yet, even though I can fully acknowledge what you said the early part of this show, that they've certainly played their way into the conversation now. But this is a better team than we all expected. And that we are at this point in year 2 under Willie Fritz, truly incredible job, and truly incredible might be understating it. I go so far as to say borderline miraculous to be at this point so ahead of schedule in a much tougher conference than we've been in 30 years. That I think all of us should really appreciate. That probably didn't expect to be number 22 in the country at this point, yet
no, not
here we are on October 28th, number 22 in the country.
Yep.
So we'll get to this week's opponent next, the West Virginia Mountaineers. And we'll preface this by saying, in part because we've spent a lot of the last several days away from our home bases and focused on things other than this podcast that we do, we just weren't able to make the time and schedules work for a West Virginia guest by the time we record this episode. And while I'd rather have one than not, going forward, I don't think we will have the same issue with the 3 regular season opponents following this one, and for whomever the Cougs will face in a bowl game, which is still a wild sentence to say, Bobby, before we even get to November. That
Halloween. Before Halloween,
that we're going to be playing in some kind of bowl in about 2 months' time. Like, really cool stuff. To get to the opponent, when it comes to West Virginia's current season, I try not to lead this negative about the quality of opponent unless it's like Oklahoma State. But I got to say, West Virginia is much closer to Oklahoma State than just about any team we've seen in Big 12 play this year. I would say Oklahoma State's worse, and then it's West Virginia, and then there's a pretty decent step up before the next team, which I would say probably Colorado. Colorado's probably the 3rd worst to this point. Because, and this is one of those, when it's all said and done, you kind of wonder, how did that happen kind of games? But West Virginia hasn't beaten an FBS team since they beat their arch rival Pitt back in September. Which, if I was a Mountaineer fan, that would make it more enjoyable. But unfortunately, most of the season outside of that game, even that game for the most part, was kind of a furious West Virginia comeback that Pitt looked like they were controlling. Year 1 of Rich Rodriguez's return to Morgantown has been pretty difficult. Bobby, what have you gotten to learn about the Mountaineers since we last met up here?
All right, so I know that their offense hasn't been great this year, but if I'm being 100% honest with you, Sam, it's one of my favorite offensive philosophies. I love the Rich Rod offense. It is so much fun to watch when it's good. Dude, when it's good, I think it's the perfect offensive philosophy. That one and the Gus Malzahn relies a little bit more on the run than I prefer, but man, the read option with, and now they've really incorporated RPOs in it. We've figured out that next logical step, getting the ball in playmakers' hands. It's just, I love watching that offense. It is a symphony of pulling guards, and like the offensive line play is beautiful on run plays. It's beautiful passing the ball because you get the ball out quick, and it's my favorite offense to watch when running well. I think that Rich Rod spread is just an absolute thing of beauty. And it's one that if I was a head coach, it's something I would study a ton, and that's what I would run personally. So part of me likes watching West Virginia, but I just don't know if Rich Rod has the horses that he needs to run that offense right now.
I was gonna say when it's working in your original statement is doing a little work there.
It's doing a little bit of work there. This year the offense hasn't really scored a ton, but boy has that defense been atrocious. Sam, the defense is 107th in stop rate. So stop rate is the percentage of possessions that end in a punt, turnover on downs, something like that, right? Where they don't score, they get the stop. Just over half their drives are stopped, so they're at like 54%, I think, something like that. Just for some perspective, U of H's stop percentage is 66.7. It's a lot better, bud. If 1 out of every 10 drives the other team is getting a stop, that's a drive a game. That's why you're not doing as well, man. They rank 84th in SP Plus defensively. Now you could say the offense is 103, so why are you talking so much about their defense, right? They're leaning on a freshman quarterback after their game one starter, Nico Marchiol. Is that how you say it?
Oh, I think it's a hard K, Marchiol,
yeah,
but
Marchiol. I have it, Koziel, right? Marchiol. He was hurt, then he took a red shirt and will enter the portal. So they're really kind of leaning on a true freshman right now. I think this offense isn't good because, one, you have that massive scheme change, and that's always hard to really bring a complete scheme change over. You've seen Rice this year kind of struggle a little bit with that as well, where even though the transition with Rice was better than I think Rice had thought it was going to be, you just see that sometimes you don't have the old lineman. And I think that Jack State team that Rich Rod came from graduated quite a few guys, so he wasn't able to go super portal like Signetti did in Indiana or something like that. This West Virginia offense, though, it can't sneak up on you if you aren't properly prepared, right? With all the motion and the eye candy that they give you, and the pulling of the guards and everything I talked about when I talked about this offense scheme, how much I love it. It's got a lot of Rice built into it in terms of that option that if you're not playing assignment football, you can really get yourself into quite a bit of trouble. Luckily, we did see this team play Rice and do really well against them. It'll boil down to, can the Cougs defensively stay in their assignments? Here's the thing, Sam. I trust Carlos Allen to blow a couple of plays up in the middle that we don't exactly expect, and or not that we expect, but that really influence the game and take this game to the next level defensively. And I think the Cougs are going to have the ability to stop that West Virginia offense.
My top concern for this West Virginia team in the preseason is the same one now. Didn't look like before the season that Rich Rod had a quarterback who was ready to start and run his system, and just seemed generally like a good fit for that run first spread that his teams have mostly featured over the years, which I'm just as much of a general football fan of as you. I went out of my way last season to catch at least a few of Jacksonville State, his last jobs, his games, and see that team. And believe you me, if there were a bunch of veteran offensive players who still had eligibility from that team, there'd be at least several here. There's a couple of Jack State guys on their defense, but like you said, a lot of their key guys were out of college eligibility. Thus, you don't really see any of those guys here. And you've seen periodic promising things from a couple younger quarterbacks there. Khalil Wilkins, who seems to fit the mold of being the running West Virginia quarterback, You saw him have a little success a few games ago, but really struggled throwing the ball. Scotty Fox, who's played most of the last 2 games, really struggled 2 games ago against UCF, but most recently against TCU, threw for 300 plus. Mountaineers went a little bit, I guess, counter to Rich Rod's historic tendency there. West Virginia has a healthy looking rush yards per game average, but you peel back the layers on that a bit. That's pretty skewed by an early season performance against Robert Morris, where they rushed for almost 400 yards. It's not a bad rushing offense for the balance of the season, but I would compare it to last year's U of H offense, or at least last year's U of H offense by the time Zion Chris took over the starter. Capable sometimes of rushing the ball reasonably well, but other than the last week at TCU, the lack of an effective passing game at times has made it a lot tougher for that rushing game and the Mountaineers offense generally to translate into anything good. We'll reiterate though, like their true freshman quarterback, Scotty Fox, had a really nice game last time out against TCU, 301 yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks, and what I think was a much closer than expected 23-17 loss to the Horned Frogs. I mean, for everything we feel great about when it comes to this year's Cougar team, we're coming off a high here after the win over ASU. Just a reminder that Arizona did most whatever they wanted throwing the ball 2 weeks ago, and ASU did somewhat get themselves back into Saturday night's game throwing the ball. I don't really have anything about this game that gives me heartburn, but maybe an open question of, can Scotty Fox challenge the U of H defense in the same way that Noah Fafita did 2 weeks ago? At times, Sam Levitt did, though maybe not super efficiently last week. I'm not so arrogant about the Cougars' defensive prowess that I won't acknowledge their young quarterback might be figuring some stuff out here, though I think doing it on the road against what's still been a pretty good defense for most of the season will, I think prove a lot more difficult here. And even then, that TCU game, they still didn't get that second touchdown to get 17 points until pretty late in that game against a not that great TCU defense. I was inclined to give their defense a little bit of a pass because they've mostly been opposite a really bad offense, but I don't know. Like I was thinking maybe like you look at that side of the ball and see a much younger group, but most of their leaders in the big categories on defense are veteran guys who transferred in probably as like 1-2 year stopgaps, mostly 1 year stopgaps under the staff. The guys I mentioned who followed Rich Rod from Jacksonville State, Fred Perry and Derek Carter Jr., also Chase Wilson from Colorado State and Darian Lewis from Akron. I would probably put West Virginia's defense ahead of Oklahoma State's, maybe Colorado, because they seem like they've fallen off a cliff among Big 12 defenses. Maybe Baylor too. I don't know them as well. I haven't watched as much at Baylor, but even if I'm inclined to be generous to the Mountaineers, this is probably a bottom 4 or 5 defense in the Big 12, and then probably a bottom 2 or 3, maybe bottom 2 offense in this league. That's how this season's gone for them so far. It feels like a year zero. I know some people like to say that you can't have a year zero anymore, but I still believe if you're not one of the most 15 or 20 moneyed programs, sometimes you need to have a reset year. And I think that's what's happening here at West Virginia under Rich Rod and his second go around there.
Yeah, I think if you're with some schools and some philosophies, right, like running philosophies, things like that, a year zero may not be necessary. But when you're coming in and you're completely changing up the scheme and you need a completely different roster style, I think that is definitely I think a year zero can be in existence for that.
And Rich Rod was one of 2, I think, interesting returning to their old team's hires from the Big 12 schools. You had Scott Frost at UCF, and obviously in this situation, Rich Rodriguez back at West Virginia after leaving following the 2007 season. Definitely too early to say for either guy because we have less than a season of data here how it's going to go, but we'll just say in the short term, UCF has been much more competitive in year 1 under Frost than West Virginia has been under Rodriguez. It's a marathon, not a sprint, so don't take this as me saying Rich Rod won't or can't work in his second time here with only just over half a season of data. But I wonder if the general things that made West Virginia great the first time he was there are repeatable now in this current era. I mean, back when he was doing it, having a mobile running quarterback and featuring his specific kind of run for a spread was a lot more novel than it is now. Not that he hasn't adjusted to the times, because he's had good offenses at Arizona since then. He's had good offenses much more recently at Jacksonville State as well. So I'm not saying he hasn't updated his scheme and with the times, but West Virginia in that era previously was great at finding overlooked guys in the state of Florida, great at finding overlooked guys in Pennsylvania and the upper Midwest. It's a lot harder to hide guys now as
Yep.
compared to 20 years ago. And even if you find guys, like there's a chance one of those top 15 or 20 money programs I alluded to maybe poaches a couple of those guys in the portal if they have deep enough pockets. So not at all me saying this can't work. Rodriguez has won pretty consistently at jobs that aren't easy jobs, like Arizona and Jacksonville State most recently. It's just been a tough first year, though still minimum 2 years early to probably even start the speculation on whether or not this will really work here.
Yeah, for sure. Like you said, it's a bit early to determine if it's going to work or not. But like I said, I love that offense. You could run that offense all day, and I would watch. I ended up getting sucked down like a wormhole earlier today when I was doing my notes and kind of finalizing that kind of stuff. I started looking at like pool philosophies from Gus Malzahn and the way what the play he bases his offense off of, and how Rich Rod does it as well. And my algorithm on YouTube is going to be all screwed up now, but and by screwed up I mean beautiful. But yeah, that offense is a very tough one to get the right personnel and things like that for.
Your algorithm thinks you're the O-line coach at like Keller High or something like that now.
Dude, my algorithm right now is currently looking a lot like Willie Fritz's algorithm, where it's just ball. Like nothing else, is just ball.
I was gonna guess that you got sucked down the highlight rabbit hole of like Steve Slayton or Noel Devine highlights from his first stint at West Virginia, which is
Pat White highlights.
Pat White as well, like a worthwhile thing to do. To be clear, those are some of the just absolute. I would say watching highlight reels like that one on like the infant YouTube 19-20 years ago is I think contributed a big part to my adult college football fandom. Just truly
100%.
Wonderful offenses to watch.
I agree.
My last thought, this is kind of Cougar faced, but this is an opportunity for this team to show it's different than some of the previous iterations were, because if you've been a Cougar football fan for long enough, I don't need to tell you that this team has its historic issues sometimes in games that is expected to win while the team is in a period that's looking like they're on the come up. And I will say, save for that late Friday night game at Oregon State earlier this season, this team has been quite good against teams they should have been expected to beat. SFA, 27-point win. Rice, a little closer than you would have liked early, but ultimately pretty decisive Cougar win. And then Oklahoma State, and probably with some hindsight, Colorado too, I don't think they're as bad as the other teams in this list, took care of business by pretty large margins in those. No less pressure to do that here, especially now that you have a number next to your name.
Yeah, that's, what do you do once you get that small number next to your name, and how do you handle that added pressure?
I have more faith that this Cougar team will handle it better than a lot of the ones we've seen, but obviously we won't know until they kick the ball off in about 5 days here.
Yep.
We'll say also pretty cool. I didn't have my notes, but I thought worth mentioning that the 2015 team, the Peach Bowl winners, the American Conference champions, will be honored at this one.
Yeah, really cool. Do you want to say it or do I want to say it?
Which one? Well, who will be there with the team?
Who will be attending?
Can I just say, I'm not walking back everything I've said before, but I will just say I'm not personally thrilled that this guy is going to be here. I'll let you say exactly who I'm talking about. Build some suspense, as we call it in the biz, like I'm in any kind of biz
and
here.
That, my friends, is a teaser.
But if it's something that was put into place by the guys that are going to be there, like, hey, if the guys in that team were like, we want Coach Herman here, I'm fine with it. I don't love these there, but like I'm over it a little bit as to where I was maybe 48 hours ago. Sorry.
Yeah, no need to apologize. I absolutely, again, do I love the idea of Coach Herman coming back? No, but if the guys who were on that 2015 team and are seeing it kind of go back and forth on Twitter, if that's what those guys want, right? Like, okay, I kind of understand it a little bit more. But it is tough to see him kind of come back. I think one of the things I told you is, and we kind of talked about this earlier today actually, is what would you be okay having Sumlin, or if the Baylor stuff doesn't happen with Bryles, would you be okay having him back? And like, I think Herman is probably the one I personally would like to have back the least outside of the Bryles with Baylor happening. Obviously, Bryles is the one I want to return the least. And I think one of the things I told you is it feels like at least let us have a good season that matches that Peach Bowl or gets close to that Peach Bowl between having him back. Like, time heals all wounds, and I don't know if there's been enough time with the way and the things he said about the university and the athletic program on his way out, and some of the things he did on the way out. I don't know if enough time has passed with that.
Yeah, I'll never fucking like the guy.
Yeah,
Point blank, never will. I'm again, the players want him out there. I'm cool with it. It's not gonna bother me that much, but
yep.
I don't really like. I don't really. I hope we make the guy. I know we're not gonna do this because he's probably an invited guest, but should make him pay for a damn ticket.
Yeah, I agree. I wish, even if he's got to pay
Eddie,
for the
Eddie Nunez
$30
sending
one.
him the invoice 2 weeks later, and him opening his mailbox and being like, "Why am I being charged for a $1,300 club ticket?"
Well, I hope you enjoyed that suite, buddy. Hope you enjoyed that suite.
Oh, maybe charge him for Chastain for having to send a courtesy vehicle to get his coach car from the Intercontinental Airport.
Yeah, whatever that charge was times 10 because interest, bud.
It's true. It's been almost 9 years. You gotta put some late fees on that.
That's what I'm saying.
Before we leave the topic of football entirely, like we always do here, we're going to talk about our picks from the week that was and make our picks for the week to come. We both had 2-1 weeks picking games from the week 9 slate of college football. And Bobby was able to cut into my lead, as it is still anyone's game for the remainder of the season. Bobby was correct on his 2 U of H game picks. He had the Cougs plus 7.5 points, and for the team prop, the Cougs over 1.5 rushing touchdowns. Missed on the Big 12 game pick of the Iowa State BYU under. I was correct on Arizona State having over 222.5 pass yards on Saturday, and my Big 12 game pick of K-State plus 2.5 in the Sunflower Showdown against Kansas was successful, but I missed on the biggest point getter as I unsuccessfully took the over in the Cougs versus Arizona State. So that gives you, Bobby, you have cut into you now have, I believe it's a 30, no, it's, I believe a 25 point deficit now, I believe, because I didn't write this in my notes, but I believe it's 230 to 205 to yours truly.
I will say what you sent me yesterday was that you are up 30.
30, okay. I couldn't remember if it was, for some reason I thought
I should have cheated, but dang it, if I'm going to
eventually gone back to that spreadsheet and been like, oh, this number that auto calculates in here is the correct total, not what I half-assed remembered at 6:01 p.m. on
I don't know, man. All I know is I've seen the equal sum in that box, and I don't know if it's calculating it or no. What is it? Div 0 divided by 0. That was what I always got a lot.
Sorry. What do you think? You think I put like a macro in there to somehow cook the book so I'm in the lead here? But yeah, I don't want to listen to that terrible album. That's My Punishment that bad to actually do free Excel work like that to cheat you. It'd be fun, but no, I'm not. All right, so I'm going to lead off with the picks this week if you don't have a problem with that.
Have at it, buddy.
For my first pick, I will say this is why I'm grateful we record on Tuesdays, because I wouldn't have gotten this value in the line if we had recorded Sunday or yesterday. But I am taking the Cougs minus 13.5 points. I was a bit less certain when it was at 14.5 previously, but I'm confident that at home and against this specific opponent that the Cougars can make this at least a 2-touchdown final deficit. Hence my pick here. For my second team prop pick from this game, I'm going to have West Virginia under 1.5 rushing touchdowns in the same way that the U of H offense has seemed to find its mojo running the football. West Virginia seems to have lost theirs in the last few games. The Cougar defense continues to be stout against the run against much better opponents. So I am taking West Virginia, under 1.5 rushing touchdowns. And for my third and final pick from the week's slate of non-U of H Big 12 games, I'm taking the under of 57.5 in the Cincy-Utah late night game in Salt Lake City. I still think the Bearcats are a good team that will remain in contention for Arlington in the Big 12 title game, but this Utah team seems to be playing with the chip on its shoulder. I don't think it's Big 12 title level, but I still think it's like top 5 or 6 in the league level good. Playing at home, playing late night, there's going to definitely be some weird body clock stuff going on with Cincy kicking off, and I want to say 10 p.m. it would be back in Cincy if it was played there. So I think that's going to make it difficult. I just don't believe Cincy will score enough on the road against this very good Utah defense to get us that total of 57.5. Hence my pick here. Bobby, why'd you give us your picks?
All right. Well, I am going to kind of make this simple. I'm going to take the Cougs with the over of 49.5. I'm going to take the game over 49.5. I will take West Virginia over half a passing touchdown. Basically, it boils down to will they get one or will they get none? I think the Cougs may take a lead late, have the lead late. West Virginia will be out passing the ball, trying to catch up. So I think they'll get one in there. So give me that half a passing touchdown. And then I don't know why, Sam, you just talked a lot about this game, but Cincy, when I looked, were 9.5-point underdogs. I'm going to go ahead and take Cincy plus 9.5.
Wow.
I don't think they're going to win the game. I think Utah wins that game, but 9.5 felt like a lot for me.
That's true. I mean, and we haven't seen Cincy really get outplayed by anyone since week 1 against Nebraska. And even jokes about Nebraska and OC Daniel Holgerson aside, they're a pretty good team at home, and week 1 is the week that consistently produces the most unrepresentative results. I don't know if that game goes exactly the same way if it's played again. So yeah, I think very justified to have faith in a Bearcats team that's mostly been quite good this season. Though I think the late night in the Utah defense and the crowd in Salt Lake City is going to find them out on a 1 week basis. Even though I still think they're way better than I expect in the preseason, and a team that should be among the ones contending for the Big 12 title game in Arlington.
Yeah, it's not that I think Cincy's going to win, but plus 9.5 feels like a good amount there.
It's a lot. It's a lot for a team that's been as good as they have this year. So we'll go over to Cougar soccer. It was kind of a typical week for Cougar soccer, which isn't uncomplimentary based on how the season's gone. A couple gutsy performances, including one against the top 25 opponent to keep the hope alive that this team could meet its stretch goal and play conference postseason soccer, but also a bit of an agonizing missed opportunity during this 2-game stretch this week for the Cougs to maybe put themselves further on the inside track to be playing in the postseason. Still, I would say, Bobby, a week worth being excited or positive about in the grand scheme of things. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was a very exciting week. You got results out of both games. You even against a really good against a couple of really good teams, you got some results there, and it kept you in the fight for the 8th position in the Big 12 championship. And for those who we haven't said that to, if you don't remember us saying it, that is what gets you into the Big 12 tournament, and that is a massive accomplishment for this team.
Yeah, I would say your super senior goalie, Lexi Gonzalez, had the performance of the season from that position, and one of the performances of the season for anyone on the team with 12 saves to keep the team's first clean sheet in conference play, which feels more like just a funny statistical anomaly than anything, because the numbers would also tell you this has been our strongest defensive team in 4 years and one of our strongest ever. It's just been a lot of games where you surrendered 1 goal in there, but spectacular effort against K-State to keep the clean sheet on a night where K-State probably had more possession and certainly a higher volume and quality of chances than you did. I mean, K-State looked very much like the seasoned road team that we expected when we previewed them the previous week, and for value probably will be the team that is more disappointed they come out with a win, but Cougars were able to still gut it out and get the shared result. And in your home finale, like you alluded to, Cougs fought hard, and for the first time since 2006 did not lose when playing the Baylor Bears soccer team. Neither team was able to do very much in the first half. Kind of felt like a nervy game, went to the half scoreless. Baylor did get on the board first from Callie Conrad, but 4 minutes later, Cameron Maddox, playing her final Cougar home game, evened it up with her 4th goal of the season. She got a deflection off her initial shot and then just slotted that home to the right of the goalie to even up the score. You could tell in the final 10-15 minutes of this game, both teams were really trying to push at different points to get the win here, to kind of solidify their places in each part of the league table. Baylor kind of around the top, the Cougs around that group of teams fighting for that 8th place qualifying position for the Big 12 tournament, but it did ultimately finish at that 1-1 score from earlier. Like I said at the top, certainly would have liked to get a win here, but also can't overlook all the things the Cougs did well to get a result against an opponent who you had been, as we said in the preview, pretty laughably uncompetitive with the last few times you saw them as a Big 12 team, and also your last season in the American.
Yeah, and this upcoming game versus TCU is going to be a massive one. If the Cougs walk away with a win, I kind of did a little bit of the math, but it's a 4-way matchup. It's kind of tough to figure out who is ahead of who, and tiebreakers. I think I spent about 30 minutes, and I kind of came to the conclusion that the Cougs are playing a top 25 TCU team, the top team in the conference, if I recall correctly.
You're correct.
Really good team. Cougs really need the win here. If they get the win, it really feels like they will probably have it locked up versus Arizona State and BYU. If they get a draw, you need a little bit of help. What you really need is Arizona State to draw with Arizona. You would just need a little bit of help there, but you got a chance at making this conference tournament, and you play this TCU team. And if you can get the draw, you go down fighting. Worst case scenario.
I also noticed, I didn't do the level of math you did, but I kind of looked at all the teams around that 8th and final qualifying spot for the tournament. K-State has got to be kicking themselves they didn't win the game in Houston, because they are 2 points off, which, I mean, they would have gotten those 2 points if they beaten the Cougars, and they're playing one of the worst teams in the conference, Iowa State, in their regular season finale. And so that allows them to still be mathematically alive, but need to have a lot of different things go their way to make that happen. But I mean, pretty incredible that you have U of H, Cincy, BYU, Arizona State, and K-State all potentially fighting it out for the spot. And it speaks to a sport that we've talked about, like, hey, like the Big 12 is pretty much better than the American across the board, but maybe some sports a little bit less than others. And soccer was that sport we kind of would usually point to as, yeah, it's not really appreciably better in soccer than the American, maybe a little deeper, but I mean, the American had top 25 high-end teams while we were in there. Although one of them is in this conference now, UCF, but the American was a very good women's soccer league. The American wasn't hindering U of H previously. It was U of H's incompetence in the sport of soccer that was mostly doing that. It's gotten a lot better. Like, K-State was supposed to be a terrible team this year. They're fighting for that last spot, and I want to say top 60 in the RPI. We were supposed to be second to last this year. We're fighting that spot. We got a result at one of the top teams in the conference, the number 5 team in the country, Texas Tech. Like, it's a much deeper anyone can get anyone kind of league. Not saying there's constant upsets. Not saying Oklahoma State isn't fucking abysmal this year, kind of out of nowhere, but 1 through like 12, 1 through 13, this is a pretty salty league. And that to me, as somebody who's followed the conference a little more now, as U of H has actually been decent in the sport, that's been kind of a realization that, hey, we should probably stop referring to this as one of those sports this conference isn't very good at, because obviously the teams at the top,
actually pretty good at it.
Yeah, Tech, elite team. Baylor, just below elite team. TCU, borderline elite. I mean, number 9 in the country. I would say that probably qualifies like elite team right there. And a bunch of other teams after that that are pretty good as well. And of course, would have loved for a much more manageable final game and maybe a few more points to your name at this juncture of the season, but worth reiterating that the fact that this team is still alive to be playing in the postseason the final week of the regular season is no small feat. Is not, Bobby just did the chef's kiss. Not something we took as a given before the season. I mean, just qualifying for this top 8 felt like, I've said it a few times now, a stretch goal. And yes, you're going to need to get a result against a very good team, against a team that has won 14 of the 17 games it has played this season. But again, barely anyone's gotten a result at Tech this season. You were like 8 minutes away from beating them.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this team's capable of good stuff. Like, don't count out Houston Cougar soccer. Like, this is a team that's been sort of frustrating in terms of like and I wouldn't say like it's not really frustrating, because it's still so much better than anything we've seen in recent seasons. But there have been a couple of games where you think, man, would have liked to get a result against them instead of having to settle for a draw.
Mm-hmm.
just for example.
Yep.
But also, no one's beaten this team's ass this year. This team played
No.
a top 25 West Virginia team at their place, was leading late, did ultimately give up the goals to lose the thing, but didn't get your ass kicked by any measure. Tech got the draw at Tech. This team can do it. I'm not saying they will do it, but this team is as capable as any in a long while to actually keep themselves alive, be playing in the postseason.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been quite impressive this year.
No easy segue here, Bobby. Houston Cougar volleyball, the team we're going to be talking about next, did
Correct.
the thing that we sincerely hoped would not happen the last time we talked about the team last episode. And I guess that's always true in the most general sense when we talk about Cougar volleyball losing a match, because we are, if nothing else, Cougar fans and certainly fans of this specific program. But last Wednesday, UCF felt like an ideal get-right game, as most of your Big 12 opponents, as much as we had critiques of this team, we did acknowledge that this team got an absolutely brutal start to the season, both for volume of road games played and the extremely difficult level of opponent you faced most of those games. UCF at home was the first match since Texas Tech, which is your last win of the season, against a team in your general part of the standings. And unfortunately, the Cougars lost. The Cougars lost from winning position, and losing another 5-setter when you had a 2-1 lead at one point is really painful. And this league is merciless because this team is still probably better than the majority of the Cougar volleyball teams that encompass our time as Cougar fans. But if you're deficient in some key areas, even the lower half of the standings level teams will eventually figure you out. And that, and probably the most oversimplified but still digestible and not inaccurate terms, is what happened to the Cougs in this one, Bobby.
Yeah, just it was a classic kind of U of H classic over the last 2 seasons, right? Where you get close and you just can't close sets. When you do get close to the lead, you just seem to not be able to finish sets, and it can be for various reasons. Other teams go on runs, and all that's great, but at some point you have to start finishing sets. And just kind of looking here, you had 2 of the sets that you lost by the minimum of 2 points that you could. The ones you won big, right? You won 25-21, 25-20. Now the third one you lost 25-17, but you're losing close sets and you're winning your sets by a lot. It baffles the brain that it can just continue to happen that way. And I'm sure the brain it baffles the most is that coaching staff, but it's just like, oh man, there's got to be, what are we doing on the margins to not win these games?
And in your last 15 matches, you've gone 3-12, which should also have the context that 2 of the 3 were North Alabama and McNeese.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this team is just not playing good volleyball right now. And I don't think anyone inside the program would disagree with me. And
No.
Of course, U of H should give David Rare time to get this figured out, because I think you were owed that much when you were the head coach of the 2 best teams in the last 25 years of this program not that long ago, and multiple other teams that would have been drastically better than the median Cougar volleyball team in the 21st century before he took over. But it's gone very wrong. Mm-hmm. It doesn't look like a team that believes it can win games anymore. And like any time that you have a shortfall as an organization, I think just take a look in the mirror and honestly assess yourself. And after the season, that doesn't mean blow everything up. That doesn't mean get rid of all the players. Like, who knows? Like, maybe you evaluate it and yeah, we actually have a lot of the right pieces, but we really need ads in this spot and this spot. And if we don't get this right, it's going to be a similar season. But if we get this right, our ceiling might be higher than people think. I don't know, but it's got to be a tough evaluation, because I know the standard of that program is higher than what we've seen here the last month and a half or so.
I agree.
So up next, quickly, the Cougs will travel to West Virginia to take on the preseason dead last team in the Big 12, who's had a much better than expected 2025 season, including but not limited to beating BYU, who might not be vintage BYU this year, but I think still like NCAA tournament level team. And they beat them at their place, which I think is probably more than you could say that you've done this season. And just anytime you make a long road trip like that, you you expect it to be some kind of challenge. Would be a great spot to get it right, and more winnable than most of the road Big 12 matches you played this season. But yeah, I don't think anything right now should give anyone a strong indication that this team's ready to beat a Big 12 opponent who has looked mostly pretty salty in their own building this season.
Yeah, these are you're not making the tournament. Uh, these are
There's
the
no
games.
conference tournament miracle run possibility here.
Yeah, it just doesn't feel like there's that going on. This really just feels like let's go out and see what we have, and you're kind of doing the um analyzing for next year. Who stays, who goes, who do you see that potential in? I wouldn't be surprised to see some different players really coming playing a little bit more this upcoming week.
Yeah, no doubt. So as funny as this is to say, we're going to close the Cougar men's basketball. We didn't want to put, without any in-season action, this team above any in-season sports, especially because we'll make this clear. We have a over 2-hour podcast largely about Cougar men's basketball in this feed, episode 1113, or over at patreon.com/sh podcast, where you would have gotten it a week earlier than anyone else. But we got to mention that between now and when we record next, your preseason number 2 Houston Cougar men's basketball team will open its season Monday night at the Fertitta Center against the Lehigh Mountain Hawks. Before we get to the opener, though I don't have a ton to say on this topic, but had to acknowledge it, Cougs were in action on Sunday for a preseason exhibition against Mississippi State out in Rosenberg, which the Cougars won 61-52. This was not broadcast in any streaming or TV sense. Bobby and I were both at that point on Sunday traveling back to our home bases, so obviously we couldn't watch this live. Again, don't expect we'll have a ton to say about this, but had to acknowledge it before we got to the opener. Bobby, have you seen anything coming out of the scrimmage with Mississippi State that you would like to mention here while we're both sitting in front of microphones?
No, man, there were some interesting lineup choices, but I think that is because it was a scrimmage. It'll be interesting to kind of see what happens on Monday night with who Sampson puts in the starting lineup, who gets the most minutes. I think we're definitely still looking at those things, but yeah, I'm pretty excited that the it feels weird because it doesn't feel like it's been a while since we've had a really good football team that I don't want to say makes you forget that basketball season is starting, but kind of makes you get surprised. I don't want to say forget, right? But you're just kind of like, oh wait, we're about to have the number 2 basketball team in the country start tipping as well. So it kind of sneaks up on you when football's doing well. Really, really excellent basketball just kind of sneaks up and bites you a little bit.
I mean, think about the last time. I know 2021, especially coming off the COVID season, which I think made us even more excited because 2020 was such a just shit year in so many ways. Like 2021 Cougar football, I'm not going to acknowledge that they weren't pretty good, but the last time we had, I think, a legitimate top 25 level football team that we were encouraged by and excited about 10 years ago. Like
Yeah,
2016 had some good. Don't get me wrong, 2016 after the Oklahoma game, Bobby, I was as high as I've ever been on Cougar football, but that season kind of went south. Not the least of reasons of your head coach having eyes elsewhere, but it's probably been 10 years that we had like a football team we're really, really excited about in basketball season, which at the time it was kind of like, okay, in 2015, I remember our first season, it was like, well, Sampson's first year didn't go that great, but he brought in some interesting transfers. If anybody can do it, this guy can do it. And he ended up having that nice little first NIT season here.
yeah.
We're not first at IT season level team here, with all respect to Gerard Stigger and the boys on that one. This team's a little bit better. Just a couple things for me from the preseason scrimmage. From the people who watched it, apparently Kingston Fleming's performance was a standout one. Like the box score doesn't thrill you, but I feel like Mississippi State is a really good torture test for a true freshman, a really good defensive team, mostly year in, year out under Chris Jans. So I think good to see how he responds to that situation. And I mean, you take all scrimmage results with a grain of salt, and nothing really concerns me about this. Just call it a vibes thing. I'm kind of ready for this team to have some growing pains in November, December, not unlike what we saw last season. I mean, growing pains might still translate to like 1, maybe 2 losses. Like that's how good this team is. But I'm ready to have some games where it doesn't look like an entirely baked cake yet, if that makes sense. And the scrimmage, I
Right.
think, maybe reinforced that for me.
Yeah, I think if you're going into this season thinking that there's going to be very few growing pains with a group of stud freshmen that are coming in, at least two that you and I believe are going to be starters. Spoiler alert for the basketball preview. I think it is if you aren't expecting some a few games where they make you kind of want to throw your hands up a little bit. I think you are sadly mistaken.
I was gonna say, like, yes, anyone eminently reasonable would expect there's going to be some growing pains there, but also watch how people react if we lose by like 4 points to a top 10 Tennessee team.
Oh yeah,
Like,
it'll
it's going to
absolutely
be,
happen.
I'm not going to look at my phone kind of night afterwards, even though that would be
That is correct.
not at all warning flag kind of game. Bobby, do you have 30 minutes of Lehigh talk in you?
I don't have 30 seconds of Lehigh talk in me.
I think I
And
got 30 seconds, but give me your Lehigh thoughts.
I bet me saying that is getting they're playing it on a JBL speaker in their locker room, just pissed off at me.
They're not Anchor. They're not Anchor guys there.
No. They are
The kids do JBL.
the kids do JBL, bud.
I don't have a ton on them. We'll give you the rundown. They were 11-19 overall last season, 6-12 against their conference competition, the Patriot League. They were picked to finish 8th out of 10 in the Patriot League this season. One thing I did notice about their team last year, they were a good perimeter shooting team and bring back their top two shooters from last year, sophomore Edouard Benoit and junior Nasir Whitlock. Neither guy was a big volume shooter last year, but I mean, worth keeping an eye on as you have some newer guys out there. In the perimeter, they did lose, I would say, their two highest usage starting guards from last year, Cam Gillis, who transferred to Howard, and Tyler Whitney-Sidney, who graduated from last year's team. And they'll have some questions to answer there, where I think this is going to get really ugly for Lehigh is on the offensive glass. Typically that's going to be a place where the Cougar opponents struggle, but Lehigh was 355th in the country last year in offensive rebounding and 343rd or worse nationally each of the 3 seasons prior to last year. Even with Edouard Benoit and Hank Alvey back for the season, that's their two front court guys. You have a hard time not seeing that being a major impediment to Lehigh doing anything here, but losing by a lot. And the numbers were mostly pretty grisly defensively for the Mountain Hawks last year. So even with the Cougars trying to figure some things out offensively, breaking in some new guys, I think that's going to be a challenge as well. I mean, I always try, even in these kind of bye game, preseason, non-conference games, to find the path of how an upcoming opponent will at least make this game more uncomfortable than we'd like for the Cougars. It's just really hard to see it here, man. Like this is ideally going to be a game where everybody who's on the roster and healthy plays a good amount or as much as Kelvin Sampson wants them to play on Monday night.
Yeah, man, you're really hoping that they don't even get close to the upset. You're looking at the Ken Palm 306th team in the country playing number 1. If this game is close even for a little bit, I think we'll all be a little nervous.
Just start breathing into the traditional brown paper bag at that point.
Yeah, we're just
being honest,
hyperventilating, going, no, not like this.
Still very excited. Still going to be doing everything in my power to be watching this basketball game on Monday night, even against an opponent that don't think is going to trouble the Cougs. It's the first chance to see this year's team on TV. It's something I've been looking forward to since about 2 weeks after the national final ended last year. Like it's Houston Cougar basketball, man. And don't worry, we'll be talking about it at a bit earlier place in the episode next week than we will this one.
Yeah, it's very exciting to see it back.
All right, buddy. It's all the Cougar sports we got this week. Take us home.
Actually, we forgot one just real quick. Oh, no, we didn't. I'm sorry.
Was it women's golf?
No, it was women's basketball, and I forgot we talked about it before we started recording.
That's why you put the strike through in your note. That's why that's what the strike through front is for, Bobby.
I forgot to do it.
Because I do have a full... Well, okay, you've broken the seal. We're not going to do the full preview, but we'll just say we'll be recording by the time the Cougs open the women's basketball season next Tuesday night against UT Arlington at the Fertitta Center. But as custom, we will talk about them probably immediately after the men's basketball program when we record here next time.
Yeah, sorry about that, Sam. That's all me, buddy. That's all me.
I did see we had a women's golf tournament. We
Yeah.
did see we had a women's golf tournament, but it was only like 3 golfers. And I was like, okay, I don't know if this rises to golf.
I was gonna play it. Nope. I went full in on women's basketball. That's how excited I am for this NIT team that I have correctly predicted, and we won't talk about it all.
We sure will.
All right. Well, that is it for this week's episode of the Scott and Holman podcast. We thank you so much for listening. If you are still here an hour and an hour and a half going forward, that is some dedication to the Cougs. We love talking every Cougar sport with you guys. It's one of the things we pride ourselves on. We were actually talking about it at the wedding. Is how they kind of you and Dustin started it as the one who talks everything, and that's something we pride ourselves on. So we love talking
really quick. Can I say something? So we're an hour and a half in. Like we could be a little like self-congratulatory, like because we're not like actually bearing any Cougar sports in this. Our podcast got a shout out during the Man of Honor. So like I was the quote unquote maid of honor was the little brother of the bride. Super cool dude. Shout out honorary brother-in-law of the pod, Steven. Super cool dude, huge OU fan, went to school for like sports stuff. Shouted out our fucking podcast, not by name, but just kind of referred to it and being jealous of our audience or something like that on it, which is just one of those like really appreciate it. And also just like I'm sitting there at like the table being like, hey, I made it. I tangentially made it into this the tapestry, this beautiful wedding. Sorry,
baby.
Didn't mean to derail your already like rolling outro there, but I thought I was like, okay, well we're 90 something minutes in. I don't think it's
we'll have a little fun.
I don't think it's abusing it to mention this here really quickly.
But yeah, we appreciate all of you guys who listen and are little degenerates like us, where we're watching games at weddings and still enjoying the wedding. So if you have any feedback for us, we'd love to hear it. You can find us on social media at SH Podcast on Twitter. You can find us on Blue Sky at podcast.bsky.social. For anyone who this may be your first episode, podcast is PAWDCAST. If you have sworn off all of your social media this year, then let me welcome you to email. You can email us at shpodcast@gmail.com. Send us an email. We will try and respond to you as quickly as possible. And then also, if you want us to really care about your opinion, you can find us on Patreon at patreon.com/shpodcast. For $5 a month, you get early access to some of our really cool things, or you get access at all to things like our post-game reaction shows, things like that. So if you are interested in any of that premium content, $5 a month is the minimum. Maximum we never really set because we can be bought like that. So you can find us at any of those places. We'd love to hear your feedback because we constantly want to make sure this is something that you guys want to actually listen to. So I think that's it for this week. Sam, what do we always say, bud?
Go Cougs.
All right. Go Cougs. Let's go.